So really the first question is, what is enterprise asset management, right? We're talking about being able to track these assets inside of a system. What do we need to be able to do from an EAM-based capability? And first things first is that we allow you basically to be able to track and really maintain assets then inside of Dynamics 365. And we can use this obviously to generate what we call maintenance requests and then also work orders inside of the system so that we can tackle those particular requests and work orders. We can also drive what we call preventative maintenance and the generation of work orders from those preventative maintenance schedules to be able to basically upkeep any of the type of assets that you have inside of your environment. And then really what we can do is we can take all those different costs, because if you think about it, if you're doing a work order for a trailer and you need to purchase a new axle for it for some reason because you have the ability to do those repairs internally, well, you can actually purchase that part, have that cost go on to that asset, but also you may have that as a fixed asset too that you may be depreciating as part of your depreciation schedule and process inside of here. So asset management allows for us to really tackle all these different capabilities, but then also influence other areas inside of our system as well. And that's a really important distinction that we'll kind of dive into as we go through this in a little more detail. Now, how does it help commodity processors? Because we're kind of starting generic at the top level here when we talk through this, but really a commodity processor, just like a manufacturer, a batch manufacturer, a process manufacturer, has a lot of different machines, obviously, that they're using to be able to go through and process commodities that you may be actually importing, obviously, as part of your load management. So we allow for you to basically track all these different types of assets that you may have. I'd mentioned rolling stock would be one, but also the machines internally that you're actually doing production against. And when we start looking at commodity processors, and really some of the tools that a lot of them don't use right now, such as MRP and some of those advanced capabilities, those can tie into here as well. We're also able to manage this from a financial position, from a commodity processor perspective. So as you have these machines and you're posting acquisition for these capital investments for maybe some of the larger machines that you're actually purchasing, and then the depreciation that's occurring against them, well, you want to be able to track obviously some of those maintenance costs as well that may then apply obviously towards that asset. And also we have the operational maintenance requests that we need to talk through, which is really those requirements that are more specific then to machines that are going through and doing our processing. Something like crushers, for example, or motors that we're using internally to actually run some of these particular machines. Because in our asset design, we allow for you to actually have parent and child based assets that we go through as well to be able to create a more realistic picture, for example, of your production floor that you may be actually tackling. And then finally, like I had mentioned before, the impact obviously of production processing. So a lot of processors, they operate off of this principle of just keep the floor busy or keep the actual processing of these particular raw materials to create our product busy. But what we're not looking at typically is how that demand generation that we have for the end ingredients that we are producing, for example, can drive decisions in commodity purchases within the system. And that's a gap that we see really at a lot of different commodity processors, because they don't understand MRP concepts. And from there, this absolutely can help, because if you think about it, if we have a machine that goes down, or if we install a new machine, we may have downtime events that could affect production, which could affect obviously what we're selling, and then also the contracts that we may need to be executing against. So these all come in together inside of one system as we go through this conversation in more detail. And it's something just to note is that the fact that the Levridge and Dynamics product, for example, allow us to basically tackle all of these different perspectives in one environment so that we don't have to create complex integrations between other systems is a really powerful tool, obviously, to have inside of your organization. Now, what are the basic parts when we start talking about EAM? So what we're going to show today is some of those basic concepts with it. And obviously, if we want to do a deeper demo for you guys, please, like I said, I've got a slide at the end here. Reach out to us and we would be more than happy to jump into more detail with it. But really, we start with primarily around 5 different areas that we have inside of EAM that we use to be able to do this processing. The first, obviously, is going to be the asset, right? One of the cool things that we have inside of Dynamics is the fact that the asset is actually detached from the fixed asset and also from the resource in production as well, but we link them together. And I'm going to tell you why that's a good thing in a bit here as we go through this. But our very first area obviously is going to be this asset concept. The next step is really the functional location of where that asset is actually located so that we can quickly identify and direct people, for example, workers, to be able to do maintenance and repair events or even maintenance rounds basically inside of your environment. The third topic that's pretty common inside of EM is a maintenance request. It would be awesome if preventative maintenance was the only type of maintenance that we had to do on in a facility, right? But more commonly, we're going to have those break fix scenarios. How do we address those? Well, we can address those obviously with maintenance requests because we don't want end users, for example, to generate work orders for us. We want to manage what our team is doing from the maintenance perspective. We also then have the ability to obviously drive work orders where we have many more advanced concepts that we may then apply to it as we go through that particular process. And then finally, obviously, a maintenance schedule that we actually have with that to be able to process now those preventative type maintenance schedules. And maybe those maintenance schedules have to have multiple steps involved with them, but we're going to go through that today as we look at some of this advanced EAM capability inside of Dynamics.